Well, first of all, I want to say how much we at Metrolink appreciate the support that we get every day of the year from the sheriff departments, from the police departments, from the coroner's offices all around Southern California. We appreciate your help in making sure that we have a safe system all over the 6 counties, and that you also help us with responding to an episode, an accident, a collision when it occurs. We appreciate the need to do a complete and thorough investigation, but we also would be very grateful for your help in trying to clear a scene as soon as possible to get the folks on the train moving either on down to their destination or at least to the next station. This video and training program have been designed to help provide some suggestions, some ideas as to how you might help us clear accident scenes as quickly as possible. I hope that it proves to be useful. We look forward to working with you now and in the future, and again, we appreciate your help very much. Thank you.
So general safety, you always expect to train on any track from either direction. Constantly be aware of your proximity to the rails. You never want to be comfortable standing between the rails or in the gauge. For some reason, law enforcement and firefighters during a collision investigation, they gravitate towards the middle of the rails. It's only 8.5 or 4 feet 8.5 inches. Not a really big space, so the perception is pretty much the same here as it is here. Never get comfortable standing between the rails. If there was to be a problem and a piece of rail equipment rolled through there, we'd have issues. So if you're not between the rails, we don't need to worry about that. If your investigation takes you between the rails, you have evidence there or you need to be there to conduct your investigation, that's fine. Just get with us first so we can assure you that we have on-track safety and we're not going to have any rail equipment rolling through your scene. So just contact us first. Don't crawl over or under between equipment. The train can start to move at any time. If you need to get under the train or between the rail cars to conduct your investigation, to collect evidence, whatnot, get with us first, and so we can make sure that the train is all what we call tied down and it's not going to move, and we've shut power off and it's safe for you to get to those points, but don't just go in and start crawling underneath a piece of equipment or between it. Trains can begin moving at any time without any notice. So as a general rule, don't use your cell phones or your radios within 25 feet of the track. We don't want first responders talking on the phone and walking near the rails, and you lose your situational awareness when you're on the phone. You're distracted, and we don't want you near the rails in case trains do start moving while you're on the phone, and we don't want you to become another casualty. So you can talk on your phones and your radios 25 feet from the right-of-way. That'd be great. Don't park your vehicles on the track or close to them. We see this a lot at collisions involving grade crossings. Officers will park their cars on the track and they'll go and start putting their tape up and doing their traffic control. So 2 reasons we don't want your car on the track. One is if there was to be an issue and a piece of rail equipment rolled through there, we're going to have a situation. The other thing is when we're getting ready to move the train and get ready to go, we don't have to find officers and keys and start moving cars. So it's unsafe and it can delay our investigation. Don't block access to the right-of-way. The picture here shows first responder vehicles and railroad vehicles. They're blocking the access to the scene. When it came time to move the body and the coroner had to bring their van in, it took us 20 minutes to untangle that, finding keys and officers move their cars. So keep the access points clear. Some officers, they don't know the difference between our passenger cars, our cab cars, and our locomotives. So here's just some photos to show you what our locomotives do look like. Our locomotives can be on either end of the train or on both ends of the train. Don't assume that the locomotive is going to be on the front of the train. Most of our trains operate in what we call push-pull mode, where you're going to have a locomotive on one end pushing or pulling the train. On the other end, we're going to have a cab car. We'll look at that in just a second. So again, don't assume that the locomotive is going to be the front of the train. It could be the cab car. Or we might have locomotives on both ends of the trains. So our cab cars, these are unpowered passenger coaches. They have a control compartment up here for the engineer who can operate the train from the cab car. Again, this is unpowered, and more often than not, 50% of the time, this is going to be leading. So this can be the leading piece of equipment on the train that was involved in the collision, and the locomotive would be on the back pushing. So what do you expect when you get out to the scene? These can be different than a lot of scenes you go to. Depending on the nature of the collision, the scene can be spread out. We've had some, and it depends on how fast the train is going and what we hit, but you can have your initial strike point and the train could be stopped a half mile or a quarter mile beyond where the strike was. And so you're going to have two big parts, or actually three parts of your scene: where the strike happened, the area between the strike and the involved train, and where the involved train is. And so you've got evidence, you have witnesses, they're a quarter mile away, and they're all part of your scene, so you need to expect that. The scene can be extremely bloody with body parts and matter all over, and evidence. And so you can have matter on the front of the train, on the side of the train, under the train, on top of the train, on walls and trees on either side of the right-of-way. And also if that person was carrying ID or other items that could be pertinent to your investigation, those are going to be scattered. So this could be a very explosive scene, and you have evidence in a pretty wide circle, plus your scene spread out maybe a quarter mile. So pay close attention to where you step or lean, because what we just talked about with the if it's an explosive strike, there's a lot of bodily fluids, biohazards around. This train here, an Amtrak train, the person leaned into the train 85 miles an hour and got hit at a crossing. And so you have matter on the side of the train, on the front of the train. This here is a close-up of the stairway that goes up into the control cab of one of our locomotives. This is a close-up of the stair. Grade crossing collision, Rancho Cucamonga. The driver was ejected from the car into the side of our locomotive, and so left quite a bit of blood and matter on the side of the train. So if you were going to go talk to the crew and use the handrails to get up there, you're going to have a situation, because all this is on the rails. And so you want to take a look around again before you stand or lean or grab. Hazmat. If you hear that we've called hazmat out, what we're referring to is biohazard. And so we have a contractor that will come out to the scenes. They'll decontaminate our trains and the right-of-way after you have finished with your investigation. They're the last folks that are going to go out there. Again, we won't send them out there until you fully release the scene, you're done with your investigation, and you're gone or getting ready to leave. And so they'll come out and they'll decontaminate the train at the scene and the right-of-way. Or if it's not so severe, we might have to go to one of our mechanical facilities to decontaminate the train there. Head-in power, or HEP. Each of our trains, the locomotive supplies power through the train, and that power is used to power the interior lights and doors and the appliances inside the train. This electricity travels through the train on heavy copper cables that are covered with rubber coating. And so these HEP cables are between the cars, all the way from the locomotive, between the cars, along the train, and they loop in the front on the cab cars and the locomotives. 480 volts, about 220 amps travel through there. So it's a lot of energy. Most of the time when we hit something, these cables will be damaged, that rubber coating will be split, or part of this apparatus could be torn, and so we have exposed high power lines, wires. And so if you have to get to the front of the train and remove evidence or conduct your investigation, you want to make sure you get with the crew members so we can isolate this. We can turn this off and make it safe so you can do what you need to do on the front of the train. But if this is damaged and it's energized, you approach it, it'll reach out and grab you. And so that's important that you remember that. Metrolink understands you have an important job to do. Most of these collisions involve deaths, so you're doing a death investigation. We understand that. You have to be thorough. We want to do anything we can to help further your investigation or enhance it. But we would like you to consider a few things. While you're conducting your investigation, the train that's involved in the collision could have 1,000 people or more on it. And depending on the nature of the collision, where the train stops, the availability of buses. Those passengers might be stuck on that train during the entire time you're conducting your investigation. And also, there's trains that are stacking up on either side of the collision, and so we could be affecting thousands of people with submarining an entire morning or afternoon commute. So in order to expedite things, we'd like you to consider some things, and there's some things that we might ask you out at the scene. Every investigation is different. Sometimes these might work, sometimes they might not. But we could ask you to do these things. If you could focus your initial phase of the investigation on the train. If you need to talk to the engineer, have your CSI folks take pictures of the front of the train, get information from the locomotive. If you need to talk to any passengers, do the train first. So when we're all ready to clear up, the train's already done and you can go. Some departments won't call the coroner until they're done with their investigation or halfway through their investigation, because they don't want the coroner to come in and start moving things around and interfering with their investigation. But we can be delayed hours from that initial call to the coroner. It could be an hour or 2 hours before they get out there. And so what we'd like you to do is call the coroner immediately once to confirm fatality and the coroner is necessary. Or at least call them a little bit earlier than you normally would. Even a half hour earlier would be great. When the coroner comes to the scene, you can send them to us. We can take them to the train, and they can do what they need to do with the train and process it and get their evidence off there and talk to the crew. And so the coroner can be doing that while you're finishing up your investigation, so you can send them to us first. We might ask you if we can move trains through the scene. And again, that depends on the nature of the collision, but if you give us permission to move trains through the scene, we're not going to bring them through at 79 miles an hour and scatter everything around. We'll bring them through at what we call restricted speed. The trains will come through very slowly, and they'll be under the direction of a Metrolink employee on the ground, and so the train can be brought through slowly, very safely. If you have two tracks that are running through your scene, the collision happened on one track, we'll ask you if you can inspect the track next to it, and if you don't have any evidence or that track is clear, we might ask you if we could run trains around your scene on that track. So that's something we might ask you. We want to get things moving. Even if we can just move the involved train from the scene up to the next station so we can get the passengers off it, that's great. If we can just bring trains through slowly, but as long as we keep things moving, that helps us a lot. Some resources for you at the scene. Obviously, the train crew is going to be your best source of information. If they're available, they can tell you what happened, the status of the train, if there's any injuries on the train. Field operation compliance officers or the security director. We're dispatched out to these scenes. When we arrive, we become the railroad incident commander. We're your primary contact with Metrolink. So if you need for us to do something or not do something, you don't have to chase around all the orange vests and white hard hats. You just get with us, and we can help with the communication that way. Also, compliance officer, we download the head-in video from the locomotives or cab cars, and we show it to you at the scene. And so that's one of the main functions that we do when we get out there. Track employee in charge, probably the most valuable person out there for you to talk to. Normally they get there before anybody else besides the train crew, but they're responsible for setting up safety on the track that's running through your scene. So if you're the primary officer or supervisor, you want to find this employee in charge and ask them, is protection set up on our track? Are we safe to go onto the track to do our investigation? So find that person. Signal maintainer. If the collision you're investigating involves a signal, a grade crossing signal, flashing lights and bells and gates, signal maintainers will respond. They can answer your questions about the signal system, how it works. They can tell you if the signal was functioning normally during the time of the collision. They're a good source of information. Mechanical personnel, They'll respond to the scene. They have to inspect the train before we can move it. And so you have a mechanical person through there. And besides being a resource for you, the other reason I bring this up is that investigation is your scene. You control the area, it's your scene. Just because somebody is from Metrolink doesn't mean that they can trade through your scene. The train crew obviously is going to be on the train and they'll be inside your scene. Track employee in charge needs access to the track so they can inspect it. Signal maintainers, normally they don't have to enter your scene, they can stay outside the scene until you're ready for them. Mechanical personnel, they need access to the train so they can inspect it. The field operation compliance officers need to have access to the train so we can download the video. But it's your scene, you determine who's in that scene and when those people enter. But just be aware of the folks that actually need access to the train. Also, you'll have railroad supervisors that will need access to the train to help with the crew, or you could have a relief crew coming out there to recrew that train. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Metrolink Bureau, we contract with the Sheriff's Department to provide services on our train. They will respond to collisions involving our trains. They are there to assist you. They're not going to take over the primary investigation of that incident. So they're there as a resource for you. If we do have passengers on the train and the train's going to be there for a while, they can assist you by taking care of issues on the train. They can help gather information for you, but the important thing is you can start your investigation before they get there, and when they do get there, they're not going to take primary. So Amtrak and freight trains. Metrolink compliance officers do not download video, head-in video from Amtrak or freight trains. And so if you respond to an incident and it does not involve a Metrolink locomotive or cab car, and involves an Amtrak or freight train, you have to deal with those entities to get the video from those trains. So we don't have anything to do with that. If a Metrolink train is not impacted by a collision involving an Amtrak or a freight train, we might not even come out to that. So just remember, freight train, Amtrak, you're dealing with Amtrak and the freight carriers as far as the video. Head-in video. All of our locomotives and cab cars are equipped with head-in video. As long as there's power to that piece of equipment, the camera's running. The engine doesn't have to be moving or in gear, so to speak, for the camera to run. As long as there's power, the camera's on. If something happens in front of the train, from the front of the train to about 50 feet out, the camera's not going to capture it because of the angle and the type of camera. So if you have a close call at a crossing, the video's most likely not going to capture anything. The quality of the video, it's a low resolution product. So this is a typical image. And as you can see, the video is good to show you where something happened and what happened, but you're not going to be able to positively identify anybody from this video. You're not going to take a shot of this and put it out trying to identify somebody. Or if a crime happens in front of our train and it's captured on video, you're not going to be able to make a positive identification with the video. So again, good source of showing you what happened, and you can tell if the signals are operating or not normally and if the gates are down, but the resolution is not very good. If the crime you're investigating happened on the track on a curve, the cameras don't articulate, and so anything that happened over here is not going to be on the video. And so the reason I bring all this up is the head-in video is a great investigative resource, but it has limitations. And so it's not a catch-all to your investigation. Identifying locomotive information for your report. The locomotive identification number, the unit number, is on the side of the cab. There's illuminated number boards up on the nose and on the rear of the locomotive. And also on the outside of the locomotive is the builder's plate. And the builder's plate is like the locomotive's VIN plate, and it will have manufacturer, serial number, year of manufacture, model. That will be on the side of the locomotive. It'll look similar to this, but it could look different. But no matter what it looks like, it's going to contain the same information. The newer locomotives, it's just a big decal on the side of the locomotive, and the older ones have builder's plates similar to that. But this will complete the information that if you have to enter into your accident report, your crash report, all that information is there. Emergency notification signs. Federal regulations mandate that we have these emergency notification signs at every crossing. The sign will help you identify that crossing. Also contact the railroad who's in charge of maintaining and dispatching that crossing. So on this sign, Metrolink sign has a 1-800-88 number and has a 24/7 number. If you have a problem with the crossing, you have a traffic collision, something on that's blocking the crossing, or the gates are going up and down and there's no train, you call this number 24/7 and we can alert the train crews if there's an issue there or stop trains. Each crossing has the CPUC designator and DOT designator. Each crossing in the United States has a unique DOT number assigned to it. Our dispatchers probably won't be asking you for this number if you tell them I'm at this crossing on this street. But in your report, I suggest you put that in your comments because it positively identifies that crossing as the one that's involved in your investigation. Location identifiers that we have on some of our rails. These are normally at crossings, and if you have a problem on a track and you call our dispatcher, they might ask which track is it on. You can say it's on track 1 or track 2, and so you'll see the name of that track stenciled on the outside of the rail. Some of our lines, we have the railroad milepost painted on the rail every 1/10 of a mile. And so there's two good resources for you. So when you're talking to our dispatchers, you can give them a pretty exact location of where you are. The state highway laws, train operators and crews involved in collisions with motor vehicles are not subject to state or local highway laws. Train is not a motor vehicle. Engineer or conductor, they're not drivers, and the motor vehicle laws don't pertain to them. The Federal Railroad Administration drug and alcohol testing exempts a train crew who have been involved in a collision. If it's a collision where somebody steps in front of our train or a car drives in front of our train and it is a collision, the FRA has exempt train crews for the drug and alcohol testing. And the reason they do that is that trains are because of the train size, their capabilities to stop quickly to avoid hitting something is greatly diminished, and there's no steering wheel that can't swerve to hit something or swerve not to hit something. So if you get sent to a collision and it is just a collision and there's nothing else involved in it, the FRA is not going to come out and take blood. We're not going to come out and take blood. So be aware that some officers think that because there's a death, we're going to come out and take blood, and it's just not that way. So criminal investigations, if railroad employees involved in collisions, if you can articulate that they've committed a criminal act that caused the incident that you're investigating, this criminal investigation, have at it. But if it's just a collision, again, they're not obligated to submit to any of your toxicological tests, red blood or urine tests. Again, if it's only a collision. So train crews involved in a fatal crash should not be the lone factor in determining whether cause for testing exists. Since train crews, they're not operating motor vehicles, they don't need to have a state-issued driver's license with them. When you go to contact a crew during your investigation, they will present you with an engineer or conductor certificate. And this is the document is mandated by the federal government. The engineer or conductor have to have this on them if they're going to be operating a train or working on the train. This is a picture ID, has their physical description. It'll have their date of birth or year of birth. You could see both. So they'll present this to you, and then they'll present their Metrolink ID. It's also a picture ID. It looks similar to this, but it's a salmon color. And so they'll have two forms of picture ID that they'll give to you to identify them. Human factor train crews involved in fatalities. This is stressful situation for them. Some of these incidents can be very personal. More often than not, if someone steps in front of the train, they'll make eye contact with the crew, or the person will give them a thumbs up, or there'll be some type of contact with the crew. Or you hit somebody in a vehicle, the last thing that you see is them looking up, or a passenger looking up in the back seat. So these can be very personal. When you go to talk to the train crew, depending on who they are and how they deal with things, they might not be able to talk to you. They might be so catatonic that they can't even tell you their name. Others, they can talk to you, not a problem. But just be aware that when you go up into the cab to talk to the crew, there could be a lot of emotions and frustrations going on in there. So just remember that.
The sights and sound of a rail incident will sear in your memory forever, whether you're a first responder or you're a Metrolink staff member that's there moments afterward. We ask a lot of our onboard operations crew, once the train comes to a halt, and there's an eerie silence and just the chugging of the locomotive, and they have to walk out to the front of the train to see what happened. And there's some cases it's a multi-times per week incident. They have to look in and take the first look to decide, do they notify an ambulance or the coroner?